everybody. Today's a great day, but it's even a better day because I get to talk to a fantastic guest today. My name is Stu Turley, President and CEO of the Sandstone Group. We're on the Energy News Beat, and I've got the William Szamosszegi, and I hope I got that right, but he's with Sazmining, a Bitcoin mining company. And I got to watch his video from last year. I believe it was in Florida, and you got to speak. Your speaking was fantastic. We're going to have a great time talking about Bitcoin mining, the importance of energy, a one-stop shop. And I love your business model. So welcome, William. I can't wait to talk to you about everything you got going on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm pumped for this conversation here.
It is fun being a public speaker and stuff. Tell us about your Florida speak and the presentation you gave to Mr. Wonderful, and bring us up to date on what's going on in your company, because it's a really great business model for ESG business mining, and you got some expertise.
Yeah, well, great question. I'll tell you, it's a funny story how I ended up speaking at the event you're talking about is Bitcoin 2021. Right. Mr. Wonderful was one of the judges that was there on the panel, and it was almost like a Shark Tank type atmosphere. I've never been on the actual show, but the way that it worked is they chose the top 10 companies within the industry that they wanted to pitch there. And so we got free tickets. We also got a booth. And before you know it, you're on the chopping block, you're going up next. It's not only Mr. Wonderful, but a lot of the other big VCs within the industry. And they're all there. You have 5 minutes, you give your presentation, and then they just start grilling you with questions. And so I'm actually going to tell you a side story that I've never told before. So before going up, yeah, this is funny. This is actually a pretty funny story. So I'm getting ready to go up, and I had my quick presentation good to go. And the way that I run the business is I'm the CEO of the company, and then we also have our chief financial officer. And I just wanted to make sure that no matter what type of question was asked, we were ready to go. And he's also a very well-spoken guy. He can answer any types of questions. So the plan was that I was going to go up and speak, and then he was going to come up and be the guy that answers all the due diligence questions. Right. And so we go, and it's a super intimidating atmosphere, just to put it into perspective, because you have this panel of judges, and then you have an entire room full of all the whale pass holders in these institutions. Right. So we run through the presentation. You can go check it out online. I think it's on our website. Right. And after the presentation, the questioning part starts. And when the questions are asked, I'm standing there just expecting Dustin to answer the questions, and then it's just silence. And before I know it, I realize I just got to answer all these questions. And afterwards, we get off the stage, and I'm talking with them and said, what happened here? I thought that we had this yin and yang approach, that we were going to be doing this, you're going to be doing that. He's like, man, this is super intimidating up there. I kind of froze up. And so that's the event that you were talking about in reference to Sazmining there.
Oh, that was so fun. Now, if it's the same one on your website on YouTube, he actually answered a few, because they asked some good questions of you guys. So yeah, they were going, and I mean, Mr. Wonderful, he's gotten quite a bit of practice. So out of anyone that's going to be asking questions, I think that he's a top tier question asker. Oh, absolutely. And so when your presentation was not death by slides. So William, I'm going to give you a round of applause, because that was cool. I hate presentations where you were up there and you were talking with your hands, but let's talk about what's going on with your business model. And I love the fact that you have the cradle to grave. You also have, you got the expertise for dropping in the mine. And tell us about how you've got the connections with the monetary side, because you can't just mine for a Bitcoin, can't drop a server in there, and you definitely got to go for ESG type power. Tell us how you got all that.
Yeah, well, one of the biggest things that I think every single person listening to has seen is this huge push on the ESG front. And there's a lot of capital that's being pretty much forced into ESG type investments. Right. And one of the crazy things that many people don't realize is that Bitcoin mining is actually one of the most environmentally friendly business industries in the world.
Right.
And so I got to unpack that, because that is a bold claim if you've only been paying attention to the mainstream news. So let's put you in the shoes of an oil executive. Let's say that you have a well and it's leaking methane. Many people don't know this, but methane is 84 times worse for the environment than carbon dioxide. This is a big problem. Now, this methane's leaking. You've got a couple of options. You could allow it to continue to leak and pollute, or you could pay over $100,000 to try and plug up that well.
Right.
Well, both these options suck. You don't want to pollute, and you don't want to lose over $100,000 to plug this well.
No.
Enter Bitcoin mining. All of a sudden, you have a buyer of that electricity that can generate cash flow from it. You can turn that methane, that pollution, and instead of it going into the atmosphere, turn it into Bitcoin through Bitcoin mining. And there are wells all over the world that are leaking. And this is a big problem. There's no other strong economic activity that can solve this methane problem. And so when you're looking at this, how ESG friendly can you get on the environmental side? You're not only promoting the capture of this pollution, but on the other hand, the reason why that these ESG investors love it is because you can actually help build more renewable energy by introducing Bitcoin mining. As you know, renewable energy sources are intermittent power sources. Sun's not shining 24 hours a day, wind's not always blowing. And it really helps if you have a buyer of that energy, the Bitcoin miner, that can take that, that can turn cash flow out of that energy, and that can be shut off at any point in time. You can shut it off on a dime. You can't go and you can't shut off electricity to a hospital or shut it off to a steel mill, but you can shut it off to a Bitcoin mine. And so more and more people are realizing this. And as more people realize this, I believe that you're going to see a huge boom in our industry.
Oh, absolutely. And, but when I got about 16 things that you just said. So we'll
run through them all.
Oh yeah. We're going to go through a bunch of these. And, on the VC market side, or your investors, ESG is taking a black eye for not being profitable. And the marriage between stranded natural gas or energy problems with the oil companies is a big solution. BlackRock lost 1.7 trillion in the first half of last year. And through their ESG, we have SVB Bank with having their problems and stuff. How do your finance folks look at your ESG story? Because it's pretty darn cool.
Yeah, so you brought up a very good point there. When you're looking at this ESG capital, when you look at where it comes from, there are mandates where these banks have to allocate a portion of their portfolio to ESG investments. And one of the things that falls out of that is that the return profile is not going to be as good, because you don't have as many companies that can go after that capital. And so it makes it a lot easier to finance or tap into that capital if you qualify as an ESG company. And when you mentioned the VC model, one of the interesting things that we got to see firsthand was that we've got a great, incredible company, but when you're competing against crypto potential returns, and the VC model, one company can return your entire portfolio, and you're looking for those moonshots. Bitcoin mining isn't necessarily lending itself to a moonshot potential return, right? You're looking at hard assets that are consuming energy and generating Bitcoin. You got cash flow, you got great margins, but the big problem is that you're not going to go and outperform, puppy coin 3000 if they decide to pump it. And so what we decided to do was say, look, well, there are certain capital streams out there that are appropriate for our business model because there are great economics within mining, but the VC route isn't necessarily the best route for Sazmining.
Oh yeah. Now, when we sit back and we talk about ESG, like I interviewed the CEO of Fry Battery out of Norway. They are coming in on the infrastructure bill and the one that was just passed and the Inflation Reduction Act to build large storage facilities. Because with you had mentioned in your other information, as you go green, you got to have storage. And they have renewable or recyclable batteries. The lithium are not in that stage. And Fry Battery, a huge operation, is coming in with those big plants, those batteries. How do you shop for renewable versus stranded gas? How do you shop for that low cost 2 cents per kilowatt? Or how do you go get that three? Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. It's one of the big things that I feel like people on the energy side, it comes naturally. They understand, okay, well, you've got to find the cheapest power. Mining has really evolved over the past 4 years, where now if you're a big miner, you are an energy company in a big way, because you're trying to find those cheapest sources of power. One of those is, of course, if you can leverage wasted or pollution, like the methane example. But another one is just looking at stranded power assets. Where is there excess power? What are those lowest cost opportunities where you can tap into energy? And you want to tap into those as a Bitcoin miner, because the lower cost your energy is, the lower cost it is for you to produce Bitcoin, the higher your margins. So this industry, the Bitcoin miners, the economics of how they make money lend themselves to only developing resources for energy that have been underutilized or that are wasted, or pollution, basically. And I think that this is the beautiful thing about how Bitcoin mining can be used to clean up the environment and make the energy sector more efficient, is because you have this swarm of miners going out, scouring the globe, being driven by the profiteering motive and the capitalistic instinct to go and improve the electricity, the way that electricity is generated, and improve the electrical grid.
Oh, yeah. The grid's got some serious problems, and I've talked to some big grid industry thought leaders, and it is truly surprising that people forget, when they're funding renewable, that they're not having the money on the grid. And you can't just throw renewable on there without having thoughts about the grid. And it sounded like in your presentation, in your total, I hate the word cradle to grave, but you even think about the grid access points. Tell us about your thoughts on grid.
Yeah, well, for everyone listening out there, the miners in a big way have been supporting the grid. And this is not just me saying it out loud. We saw it in Texas when they were going through rolling blackouts. All these miners that had invested into capacity, all of a sudden now had that additional capacity that they could contribute to the grid when the demand was really high and when there wasn't enough energy. So miners are a great support to the grid. It's an additional lever where you can turn them off at any time and have that additional capacity to support all the ratepayers. And so going to, I guess, the heart of your question is, we have a broken system the way that it is today. And we take it for granted that whenever we turn on the lights, they work. Like, there's a light right here. I never am worried when I flip the switch if it's going to turn on. And that's a pretty incredible thing, because there are many people around the world that do not have access to reliable electricity. If you don't have access to reliable electricity, it's not just lights. You're actually talking about human lives that are being lost. You can't run hospitals if you don't have reliable energy. Lives are being lost. It's just running water in and of itself. Everything, all of human civilization is built on this bedrock of being able to access and harness electricity. And so anything that we can do to build up more capacity and support human civilization with the ability to generate and control electricity, the better.
You hit on you kind of just touched on the grid aspect of I believe they're called the balancing authorities. And as people invest in the microgrids, the nuclear modular reactors coming around the corner, they get paid a certain amount. And if you know, you may have to correct me, but they get paid to be on standby. And so if they've got a power plant, your solution, I'm going to call what you do a solution, and your solution helps pay for that power company to remain on standby, because there's two different rates. If you're supplying the grid, or you have to remain on standby. So for a natural gas power plant, which is now widely accepted, as ESG, because you got to use natural gas in order to get there. Your power plant companies are gotta be happy about this.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because I didn't coin this term, but a lot of people are looking at miners as almost like a virtual power plant that just makes it a lot easier to make the grid more efficient.
Right.
One other piece on that, though, is that as a Bitcoin miner, the way that your incentives are driven, you want to continue to support these projects that allow for more capacity to come onto the grid. And so we've seen so many miners go and make these projects that would have failed or would have just gone under viable. Many people, and so if we take a step back, yes, we're focused on ESG friendly mining, and that's renewable energy or carbon negative energy. But I actually take a very different view in my approach to energy than a lot of the people who might fall into that camp. I think that I don't think that particular energy sources are bad. I just think that they have different properties. And one of the things that you see is that there's this huge attack on the oil and gas industry. And all of these people are feeling the pressure to go and switch off of natural gas and go towards renewable energy. Right. And they're, at the end of the day, if that's what they need to do because they're being forced to, then they're going to try and do it. And so they need to still invest in and build renewable energy. You can't snap your fingers and all of a sudden you have 20 windmills. That takes work, that takes capital, that takes investment. And Bitcoin mining makes it easier. It's just going to accelerate the transition to renewable energy. But that's me kind of going on my soapbox there. I do really have a tremendous respect for everyone in the oil and gas industry, and I think that they have been unfairly demonized. And it's pretty gross to see, because at the end of the day, they're providing a lot of value to society. And if you shut them all down, then very quickly the people who are attacking them would realize that they want the oil and gas companies to continue operating. Everything you see in your room, people forget that it's all oil and gas that got it there. You can't, I mean, if you got an iPhone, it's got oil and gas just to get it there. So it's the bedrock of civilization, and they've been attacked. And I actually see a lot of the same types of things being thrown, like an analogy between how the oil and gas industry has been attacked, the same way that people are attacking mining. They do surface level, they don't realize what's going on. You talk to anyone on the ground about what's actually going on, and you realize that Bitcoin mining is very beneficial. Same thing with oil and gas. We intuitively know that this is extremely beneficial for all of us. And who are you to say that someone in a developing or third world country shouldn't consume more energy when you consume over 50 times as much energy than them on a daily basis to live your everyday life? Like, why are we going to force energy poverty on other parts of the world? It's pretty stupid. I'd hug you right now, but I guess a man for our podcast, a man hug over Zoom really is kind of stupid. We're both waving our arms, but okay, this brings up about 4 or 5 other questions here as I'm sitting here. Your responses are spot on, and just, I believe that we need to use the lowest cost kilowatt per hour to elevate humanity out of poverty. I don't care what kind of power we use. Let's just get humanity out of there, and we shouldn't do this. So how is Bitcoin mining, like in Fort Worth, Texas, the municipality has said, we're going to be Bitcoin mining, and they're even funding their city through the Bitcoin mining. Around the world, we see countries that have brought it into the city, to the country. But are you working with folks around the world to try to elevate humanity by funding, just like you've mentioned that you're help supporting energy? And do you think there's anything anybody can do? Great question. So to start, we're getting into the monetary properties of Bitcoin. So we've been focused on the energy side. Now we're going to get into the monetary side. And I think that what really makes it real for people is actually some of the current events that we've been seeing. We've been seeing these banks failing and these banks going under. And if you ask someone on the street, or even ask someone who might be in finance about some of these very basic questions that underpin the financial system, they won't know the answer. So I'll ask you one right now.
Okay.
What percent of deposits, like let's say that you have $100,000 in your checking account right now. What percent of that do you think the bank actually has on hand for you and all the other depositors? You look at your account, you see 100K, you think you have 100K. How much does the bank actually have?
I'm going to guess 10%. I'm guessing. I know
that's a great guess. That's a great guess. So 10% was the law up until 2020. Then you had craziness in printing. So banks had to have at least 10% up until that time, excluding smaller banks, regional, that they had more leeway.
Right.
So that in and of itself, before 2020 and before, if you had 100,000, the bank had to have at least $10,000. But when you go and you print like a madman, things obviously are going to break. If you or I try and earn dollars, we have to earn it. We have to work. If we click a print button, that we didn't just do trillions of dollars of work. So inherently things are going to break. They can't maintain that 10% reserve. So they scrapped that law for banks, and now banks can have less than 10%. So I looked at this the other day, because obviously you want to look at how much, after these bank runs are happening, you want to see how much these banks have on average in reserve. Now, instead of 10%, they have 0%. Literally on a percentage basis, they have 0% in terms of the deposits. Now, many people don't think about this. Many people aren't looking at this, and we see it happen. You see it happening all around the world. You see it happening in other countries, third world countries, and everyone just brushes it off thinking, oh, it could never happen to us. Well, these other people around the world are forced to learn about Bitcoin, because if you don't, your entire family's money, your generational life force is wiped out in front of your eyes, and there's nothing you can do. So if you know that your currency is going to hyperinflate and you're going to go and have equivalent of 10 million US dollars go to nothing, then you're going to try and protect yourself. So with that said, I think that the system's broken. People all around the world know it's broken, especially if you've lived through it, you know it's broken. In the US, we've been more shielded. Yes, double-digit inflation. Okay, that's kind of a pain. It sucks. It's really bad, but at least we can still continue to live. Now with these bank failures, it's bringing it to the forefront and tying it all back to the mining side. The reason why Bitcoin is so beautiful is because it doesn't matter what your social credit score is, what your views are, what country you're in, what dictator or regime you're living under. If you're living in Venezuela and they're cracking down on you or your currency or shutting down your bank accounts, there's going to be a miner like us in the US or anywhere else. They're continuously putting forth transactions in the network. So you're not going to automatically be censored or shut down just because you're under one corrupt government. It's open source that anyone in the world can plug into. And I think that that's what makes Bitcoin beautiful in a big way. You know, the current system in the US, it's a pain in the ass, but it's not nearly as bad as what people around the world are facing. And so, yeah, that's where the mining comes in, is we're helping support the network. If you're living in some other country, there are miners around the world that are going to continue to support the Bitcoin network, continue to follow the rules of the network. And it's a system that you can trust.
I'll tell you what, William, you're hitting all of the hot buttons for energy poverty and everything else. But on SVB, there's a political aspect of this, and there's a financing of renewable technology. Renewables aren't meeting the needs because you nailed it, William, with the printing of money. I think that is exacerbating the inflation. You get too much money, you get inflation. And then as SVP, everybody was saying, oh, they had too many renewable tech companies in there. I don't think the tech companies should be penalized for having their money in a bank and operating, because that technology's got to grow in order to get full ESG. You can't, on the current technology today, renewables can't make it. So, and the banks need to not, SVB was just bad management. I mean, it got a black eye for renewable tech, in my opinion. And I think it was bank failure as opposed to am I making sense on that? I think the tech companies need to be financed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. There's so many variables at play. And so for everyone listening, I mean, if they've been on Twitter, they know that this has been a hotly contested issue and it's become very politicized. And a lot of these, and politics has really reared its head in a big way into what's been going on here. We can just leave it at that. We could talk about that for forever, but
yeah, we don't want to get canceled.
Yeah, exactly. If I haven't been canceled in this already at this point, I would say that the big thing to remember here is that everything stems down from the way that the monetary system works.
Right.
So and you talk about the printing of all these trillions and trillions of dollars, yes.
Right.
What ended up happening is when you print all that money, all these companies have more money and then they're going to go and deposit it at the bank. So all these banks saw huge inflows. And as you know, banks, their business model is to take that money in and to lend it out and make more money on it. Right. Well, they were trying to play in a game of allocating money where you had no idea what was going to happen with rates. Like, so you're playing this game of trying to allocate this money. And if you're going and you're buying these bonds that you think are great, you're locking in gains. And then all of a sudden the Fed goes and hikes up rates at just a crazy amount that has never been done historically. That's going to completely mess up your model and mess up the economics of your business. And then all of a sudden, if people lose trust in a bank runs can happen at any time. As soon as the bank run, as we talked about earlier, the fractional reserve system, they have 0% of capital on hand. So if all of a sudden all your depositors lose trust in you and they start trying to pull, then your bank's going to fail. And it's the whole house of cards, the way the monetary system works. It's like that little meme where there's this dude running around spinning plates and he's trying to keep them all up and you just know that plates are going to start falling. That is what is happening right now with the financial system. No one in their right mind is looking at this mess and thinking, oh, this is fine. This is going to work. There's a solution here. It's just wondering how long you can keep the charade going.
Oh, yeah. Now, I did read a couple articles about Biden's new, and again, the UN banned me. They don't like my true comment or what I feel are true and my opinions of elevating poverty. So we'll just say I'm not a UN fan, but it's a badge of honor. But in political aspects, Biden in his budget has, I think, a 35% tax on energy on Bitcoin mining. Are you hearing anything? I don't know that it'll pass. But that kind of a tax, boy, I sure hope there's some ESG language in that, because the Bitcoin miners, in my opinion, don't need to be hit in the back of the head with a shovel. Oh, that was a good pun. I just came up with that pun. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, so that's a very good point. And we're still looking at how all of this is going to play out.
Right.
It's interesting from my point of view, being within the industry and seeing everything that's going on, the dominoes falling, the politics getting involved in the banking sector, them attacking crypto-focused banks in a big way, and then simultaneously seeing this mining tax that they're proposing, as well as I would say the other big thing is that this I believe is going to become a state versus federal issue, because the states love it. Like, for example, Texas, Wyoming. Yeah, exactly. These states benefit from it. And it just seems to obviously be some type of political attack. I'm not sure when exactly this is going to be posted, but I've also been hearing rumors of this New York Times hit piece that's going to be coming out attacking the mining industry. And the person writing it doesn't want to speak with the people who actually know what's going on, like myself and others. And so it's just a very targeted attack, all coming to point at this point in time. And it reminds me of that saying, there are decades where nothing happens and weeks where decades happen. And right now we're in one of those times. And it almost feels like we've been in those times since everything happening with COVID in 2020.
Oh, yeah. William, you nailed it again on another topic, and I'm sorry, because you and I, for our podcast listeners, you and I are talking, I'm just like, we're waving our arms because we're both passionate about what we believe in the industries and everything else. as a CEO and you're looking at the industry thought leadership, your articulation of everything going on is fantastic. And I'm sorry for complimenting you, but you're hitting all the hot buttons here. I believe that education in the marketplace can help out more than anything else. How do you see what you're doing to be an educator and a thought leader? How are your next steps? You're on our podcast, which I am so grateful for. You've got 3 other podcasts today. But what are some of your other visions that you can do to get your word out there as a industry thought leader? How can you go do more? You're a CEO. How are you going to do more?
I'm really lucky and grateful for the people that I work with at Sazmining. And so we were talking offline about this, that as I've been able to recruit some of these incredible people to work and get everyone pointed towards the right direction with the company, it's freed up a little bit more of my time where I can go and do more podcasts and speak with more people. And I do think that that's super important. Even though it might not be driving something directly to our bottom line, at the end of the day, we need to not only protect our industry, but we got to let people know what's going on. I mean, it would have been a tragedy if the oil and gas industry never really got up and running to the way that it did. The amount of human flourishing and the amount of human suffering that would have happened if the oil and gas industries weren't able to go and really build out. That's a similar type of situation that we're in right now. And I think it's important to let people know what's going on, because these are complex topics. Like, think about everything that we've talked about on this podcast. We've talked about how the financial system works, like the monetary policies, not in just in the US, but abroad. Talked about the energy sector, renewables, oil and gas. These are all key areas of Bitcoin mining. And the thing is if you just show one side or one half of the story or 1/10 of the story, which is what happens a lot of the time, you can completely miss what is actually going on. And so I think it is really important to go, especially at this point in time with everything happening in the industry. And I do really appreciate you, being here and interviewing me so I can talk through these things, because you can't do this in a 5-minute soundbite or 5-minute interview where you go on to some news station. It's something where you really need to give someone the opportunity and the space to be able to flush out thoughts and then ask questions and go back and forth on them.
Well, thank you for the kind words. I'll pay you later. But when the way we do this, we see a lot of SEO value in transcripts and linking, and Dr. Google loves the fact that this is not just a listen, but we see how we do it in our trying to educate these kind of things. So I applaud you in going in trying to educate folks. We're not an adversary. We try to get the word out there on those things. What's coming next around the corner for Sazmining? Tell us what's going on for the rest of the year. And what kind of vision do you have in order to solve all these problems and things going forward?
Yeah, well, the first one ties to, I think, a lot of the concepts that we talked about, where there's just a lot of uncertainty. I mean, if you're sitting there and you're looking at your monthly spending, it's very obvious that prices have gone up, and they've gone up more than you're being told. So how are you going to protect yourself? Well, are you just going to leave it in cash and watch it evaporate over time? Are you going to go and invest in a market that many people believe is overbloated or going to be going down? Or are you going to try and find a way to opt out of this madness and get into a way to protect yourself? And that has been historically with a lot of people in Bitcoin. And we've seen a lot of people save themselves by doing that. Now, at the end of the day, that's what I'm promoting in a big way. I think that even if you don't go and put a substantial amount, I just recommend people get off zero, because I do think that there's going to be a lot of pain coming. And I do think that there's going to be a lot of help coming for the people who actually decide to go and see everything happening on the chessboard and make the right move. And at Sazmining, our particular role within that is there's a large contingent of people out there that might own Bitcoin, but might want to start mining Bitcoin. And so what we want to do is, your time's too valuable to go and learn how to mine, set up these facilities, do all this craziness, negotiate energy contracts. So our goal was saying, look, as people who understand what's going on and who want to start mining Bitcoin, let's build a product that we want. And that's what we did. So our website, if you check it out, sazmining.com, allows you to go on, you can buy a Bitcoin mining rig, and now you have a hard asset that's doing what we talked about here. Yeah, just start generating Bitcoin off of hydropower in Wisconsin. And it's as easy as just buying a rig, linking a Bitcoin wallet, and seeing the Bitcoin being deposited regularly whenever your machine earns Bitcoin. And so that's what I'm really excited about. I was really, really grateful to be working with our team to bring this to market, because I think it's important. I think when you have an economic stake in something, you're forced to learn more about it. And that's what I've been focused on there. I'm also actually going to be starting a personal brand podcast where it's going to be speaking with other thought leaders, not only in Bitcoin mining, also in energy, all these other different sectors, and talking about entrepreneurship, and hopefully doing as good of a job as you interviewing. We'll see.
Well, thank you. I've done a lot.
How many episodes have you done up until this point, like roughly?
In my old one, like 200, we were getting 25,000 downloads on that other show. Right now, like we discussed, we'll probably hit 1 million downloads on this podcast by Q3. And it's just going bonkers. And I would love, William, to help you out in any way I can, because I want to help all other people podcast, because your industry thought leadership needs to be taken advantage of. And in podcasting world, I'm going to just divert here for a sec, because podcasters just podcast and they throw it out on Apple and they think you're going to get found. It doesn't work that way. You got to be able, just like you're an expert in finding these kind of things in those, when you find that you're an expert and you can get a podcast moving in the way that we've done it in the past. I love talking to folks and telling them what I've been abused by. I mean, what I've found in order to get to that next level. But, have your folks give me a buzz. And as you get ready to rumble, I really want to help you. You're an industry thought leader, William. You're not going to have a problem interviewing guests. You're going to knock it out of the park. But you can't let your folks just put it on Apple and think it's going to happen.
Yeah. I appreciate that. And I do have to say, out of all the podcasts I've done, you are an absolutely incredible host. So I definitely am excited to learn from you, and I'll take a page or two out of your book.
Oh, well, again, I'm very humbled by this. And as we come around to the last little bit, we've covered where you're going, we're covering your thought leadership. I just really feel very good about this podcast. But what's coming around the corner next for you personally? You said that you've offloaded some of your things so you can focus on being an industry thought leadership. CEOs get burnout. I know I work a bazillion hours. I work with investors, having the investors. I've got a couple that are fairly large. Depends on what you call fairly large. What's a few billion between friends, right? And so I help do that, but I have the passion for helping educate on this. Besides coming up with your own podcast, what's coming around the corner for you personally, William? How are you going to be a better CEO in person?
Yeah, I think that when you look at, and this goes for everyone, when you look at your journey of year by year by year, every single year you're learning something. You can look back at that time and take away some valuable lessons. And ideally it happens more frequently than a year. But what I've been trying to do is not only listen to a lot of other podcasts, try and learn through that, but I still am involved in the company. It's just changing of responsibilities in a way. I think that one of the best books that any CEO should read out there is a book called Rocket Fuel. And it's actually not talked about as much as you would think, but it really talks about how there's a concept of the integrator and a concept of the visionary. And the visionary is the one that as it sounds, has the vision, is looking at where things are going, is making sure that the company's making the right decisions and positioned properly. And then the integrator is the one who makes sure that everything is executed, make sure that resources are being allocated effectively, making sure that the trains run on time.
Nice.
And so that's the role that we've slotted into at Sazmining. They say it normally takes about a year in working with someone to really get that transition where everyone can sprint in their lanes. And Kent is an incredible integrator for our company. He's built out the same business model, but with residential solar. So he was pioneering the first residential solar PPAs. Instead of mining rigs, he was doing solar panels. And so he's the guy for it. And it's, I'm really grateful to have him at the helm there as an integrator, because he's doing a much better job than I would be doing. And in terms of actually one other piece with the pipeline, a lot of our customers were not only, they liked mining, but they also wanted to have a stake in Sazmining, the actual company. And in order to help make that happen, we went and partnered with a company called Start Engine. Which allows people, it'll have all the details on the site, but if you go to startengine.com/Sazmining, maybe we can link it.
Crowdfunding.
Yeah. So we issued a, through them, I believe it's Reg CF, but it allows people to own a small part of equity in Sazmining as well. So I almost forgot to mention that. So thank you for, for somehow bringing the conversation back around to this.
Well, do you have a vehicle for larger investors? I've got some right now that I'm working on energy projects, and they are, I think, large enough to be interesting for you. So do you have a vehicle for taking those kind of investors rather than just the crowdfunding?
We do. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe we can talk about that after we finish up recording in a little bit more depth. But yeah, we certainly do have that, and that'd be great to talk through with you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. And normally we shoot for 30 minutes, and I felt like this was actually 15. So thank you, William, very much for your time, and we'll go ahead and end it here. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. That flew by.